So welcome to the Safe System Assessment course. My name's Ken Beer. I'll introduce myself a little bit more, and you can see Loretta on the screen, and we'll introduce Loretta shortly. As I mentioned, you're on the webinar version of Zoom. We'll explain how you interact with us and do your assignments and get involved shortly as well. Now, we are recording this session. Now, the reason we record it is in case you miss a session, you can catch up by watching the recording. Or if there's something that's said that you want to go back and review for a second time, you can do that. So those will be made available about 24 hours after the session, sometimes earlier, but it just depends when the recording comes through. I also provide a content warning there in the sense that we show some road crash scenes. Nothing overly graphic, just trying to learn and understand what went wrong, what made it severe, what we can do to lessen these. But if that's something that could disturb you, I flag that at this stage. Also, at this point, I want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the many lands on which we are running this training course, and we have participants from across Australia and in a whole lot of different places, which is wonderful. It's one of the great things about the online learning environment. We can have participants from all over the place, but I want to pay respects to elders past, present, emerging of the varied lands on which this course is being run. Now, Loretta, I think you can introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how people can interact.
Sure thing. So yeah, Loretta here, training coordinator at Safe System Solutions. So you would have received a lot of emails from me or my team, or the team, I should say. In regards to all the training sessions that we do at Safe System Solutions, to run through sort of how you can interact through the sessions. There is a chat function, of course, already being used, which is great. So please, continue to use that chat function to interact, make any comments if you like. There is a raise hand as well if you did want to sort of raise your hand and actually speak, because as Ken mentioned, it is a webinar, so we can't see or hear you. And there's the Q&A. So if you do want to ask questions, we definitely encourage you to ask questions. We want you to learn as much as you can. So use the Q&A function to ask questions. I'll be sort of in the background assisting Ken, and I'll let him know when some questions have come through. So we'll do our best to answer those. As usual, if it freezes on you, Zoom freezes, or you can't use some function, please log out, log back in. It's usually the thing that makes it work. So hopefully that's there. But again, another backup, there is PDF slides. So in the LMS, which I will run through later, the learning management system, there is the presentation there as a PDF file. So you can actually download that and you can follow through the slides if your tech fails. So you can dial in, etc. So lots of information on the emails that we have sent you. And in regards to the chat, there is also just there, you can either send your chat directly to the hosts or to everyone in the webinar. So that's it from me. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Loretta. And just reiterating there, I will be asking questions of participants and expecting you to answer through the chat function. At any point, ask your questions as I'm ticking along. Don't wait for me to sort of pause and stop and say, okay, does anybody have any questions? Because by the time you type it, I'll have moved on and then we're jumping back and forth. So just as you think of it, type it in. If it's covered in the content, Loretta will, not sort of pass those on to me, or we can have a chat about them anyway. So use either the chat or the Q&A to put your questions in. We'll find it. The other thing is that at any point you have any issues with the course, that's your key point of contact, training@safesystemsolutions.com.au. If you're having tech issues, if you've got problems getting your assignment in on time, if you're confused by some of the content even, shoot that through and it'll get to the right person. I like the chat to everybody. I like a bit of chat going on in the background, because we don't get that lunchtime networking catch up and people being able to talk about different issues. So the chat provides a little bit of that. So feel free to use that as well as you have different insights or comments. Now, Loretta, you mentioned this learning management system. Please expand on that.
Yeah, so the learning management system is where we sort of house all the content for the course. So as we go through, which we'll show you through the system later, but I know some of you have already logged in and introduced yourselves as well. So I did see, there was definitely one person I saw this morning that had introduced themselves. So they've definitely logged in. But yeah, we'll run through it in detail, but this is where all the session content, quizzes, assignments are in this system. So that's what we'll use and look at later.
Good. Now, if you have not logged into the learning management system, you will not be able to pass this course. So yeah, if you're thinking, I won't bother doing that, think again. You're going to have to. So learning management system is pretty self-explanatory once you're in there. But of course, if you have any issues, training@safesystems.com.au. Okay, so the two people that will be running the content of this course, myself, Ken Beer, I am the Principal Engineer at Safe System Solutions, and my colleague, Max McCardle, who is the Engineering Operations Manager at Safe System Solutions. So both Max and I have done lots of safe system assessments over many years, and I've certainly been involved in a lot of the development of the guidance around safe system assessments for jurisdictions and at an Austros level as well. So we've got our contact details there if you want to ask us any questions, follow-ups or the like. So you've got lots of opportunity to get in contact with us. So Max will be taking the sessions on Wednesday, Thursday. I'll be doing today, tomorrow and Friday. And it is a packed sort of week. You've got assignments as well. Now, we understand there might be a little bit of lag on getting those assignments done. We'll explain all that shortly. So a couple of little tricks we have in the online environment to try to keep you engaged. One is our friend Wally the Wombat here. So you have to keep an eye out for Wally throughout the session. So this symbol is going to appear on slides in different spots, different sizes, and you've got to keep a track in each session as to how many times that symbol appears somewhere on the slides. And then as part of our end of module quizzes, which you are marked on, you'll be asked how many times Wally appeared. We give you a little bit of leniency either side in case you just happen to have been filling a coffee up or something and listening. But keep an eye out. Now that's Wally count is 0. That's not an official one, but that's what they look like. So keep an eye out for Wally. And Loretta, you look like you're in a prize pit of some description.
I am. I've got lots of prizes to give away, as you can see behind me. What have we got? Pooh Bear and Batman and no, but so as we mentioned, please ask questions, good questions. Any question is a good question, really. But Ken likes giving out prizes. So I'll keep track in the background of who wins prizes, and we will send them out to you. So once you've successfully completed the course, if you have won prizes, we will send those to you. And also trivia. So from tomorrow, we'll start a little bit early, just to try and get people sort of coming through. But we'll start off with a few trivia questions, and you can win prizes there as well.
Yeah, so I'll give out prizes. Yes, they won't be those ones behind Loretta. They're there for visual effect. You'll be sent those in the post after the end of the course with a copy of your certificate for any prizes you pick up along the way. So yeah, get involved and get in, log in a little bit early before each session, and we will be able to give out a few prizes. I've got little Teams notifications popping up, which is fun. Anyway, we'll carry on. Prizes are available. Okay, to successfully complete this course, you are going to need to, actually, you can explain that while I go into notifications on Teams. And
That sounds good. Okay, so as I mentioned, in the learning management system. So firstly, you do need to attend 4 out of the 5 webinars this week. You know, we understand things happen and you may not be able to make it, but please try and attend all 4. Remember, the sessions are recorded, which will be uploaded in the learning management system. So you can watch them later on anyway. But you do need to, you know, satisfactorily complete all the tasks in the system. There's quizzes, assignments, and one of those assignments is the site visit. So yeah, we'll run through them in detail as we go through each module. So after, you know, each session, at the end of the session, we'll run through what you need to do for that module. So you'll see them come up as the modules sort of go through the week. But most importantly, you do need to achieve an 80% pass mark. So that's on the quizzes, 8 out of 10, or 80% for the 2 major assignments. We do offer one-on-one coaching. So if you're, you know, needing, you know, a little bit more guidance on the assignments, please feel free to reach out, and we can arrange a coaching session, about 30 minutes, and we'll run through and help you out on that. But good news is, with the assignments, you've got up to 3 attempts anyway. So don't fret, you know, we're here, we'll help you, and you'll get through everything.
One-on-one coaching available. Yep, thank you. So yeah, just reach out to Loretta, training at safesystemsolutions.com.au if you have any issues with that, making any of the sessions, you know, your minimum session numbers and the like. Okay, so I just want to contextualize things a little bit before I jump into some content. But if you've got any questions on the admin, the logistics, the running of the course, or how to interact or the like, pop it into the chat now, and we can discuss that. It's good if you've got a question, probably others have the same question, so type it into the chat as we go. Safe system assessments. So let's just recap. In the management of the road environment, roads and streets, we have like different independent assessments for safety, and road safety audits are one that have been around for quite a long time. Over 30 years in Australia, road safety auditing has been a very common practice. Well, it didn't start out common practice, but it is very much now. And a road safety audit is that independent assessment of a transport project to try to identify safety deficiencies and lessen risk as a result. So there's also design reviews, and that's a process where if there's a new design of upgrades to infrastructure, changes to the road environment or street environment, that the designer will do their design and have a colleague or somebody do a review of their design. So that will also intuitively look at safety issues and identify things. There's a bit of overlap between a road safety audit and design review, but there's many things in the design review that are not covered in audits, and vice versa. So safe system assessments, which is what we will be going through over this week, it does overlap with road safety auditing in its current form and some design review stuff. But there is quite a bit that sits outside here that's not covered in a road safety audit. And the reason I mention that is a very common thing that will be said to me or to others, and probably to yourself after you've done the course, is, well, why do I don't need to do a safe system assessment. We get a road safety audit done. So they're not understanding there are things outside of that. And that's everything from identifying particular issues, but also the way things are presented and what we can use the safe system assessment methodology for. So there is extra stuff in there and extra value. We have these other things, safety and design, which many of you will have heard about. That there is overlap again in all of these, but safety and design is a little more focused on the safety of workers in the construction of whatever these changes are, in the management, the maintenance, the decommissioning. So there is a little bit of overlap there. And then DDA, so the Disability Discrimination Act, that's the some sort of check, some sort of review or audit to check conformance with the requirement that the facility can be used by all road users, so people in wheelchairs, vision impaired, or the like. So again, there's some overlap in some of these. I just wanted to give you that context. So if you are an experienced road safety auditor, or you've been involved in some of these other ones, you'll probably have some good insights and already be moving along quite well for safe system assessing. But there's some particulars that sit outside of that. Okay, so I might get into some content now, and I will be asking you a few questions shortly as I tick along. But the first thing we need to do in a safe system assessment course is just make sure everybody is on the same page with what this thing, the safe system, is. So some of you are absolute experts in the safe system, and that's great. Some of you, it's probably a new concept. Some of you probably feel you know what the safe system is. You've got some key phrases that you bring out. I'm going to really dig into practical understanding of the safe system philosophy. So we're all on the same page as we delve into then being able to look at a project or an existing bit of road and understand how well it aligns with these principles of the safe system. So by the end of this module, we're going to go through and recap or list the elements, pillars of the safe system. We're going to determine kinetic energy thresholds for different crash types. We're going to look at the difference between traditional approaches to road safety and the safe system approach. We'll touch on behavioral change and vehicle safety interventions, which is an interesting thing to do, and I'll explain how they fit within a safe system assessment context. And we will talk about speed as a critical element to the safe system approach. So there's a Wally. Your Wally count is 1. No more help from me. And I don't like this many words on a slide, so most of my slides are more picture-y and looking at case studies and things rather than words on a slide. Okay, so the safe system, I'm sure many, if not all of you, have heard of the safe system and have some understanding of what it is. And the reason for that is that it is a commitment by every jurisdiction in Australia. They have committed to the safe system approach as the way that they will address road trauma. And so you'll find that in the different state strategies or road safety policies, this commitment to the safe system. And safe system assessments are heavily starting to integrate into that. The reason for that is that the safe system is a philosophy, right? It's a general philosophy and a way of operating. The actual application of it and whether things align well with safe system principles or not, it's been a little bit murky in the past. So the safe system assessment methodology has been a clear way to be able to look at a project and assess it, which is good, because I was certainly around, having debates with people in road authorities quite a lot while I was in the Victorian Road Authority, debating, is that safe system, is it not? And, we can't do that because it doesn't align with safe system principles. And we didn't have a really great, it was all sort of opinion-based, based on a philosophy. We've got something a little more rigid than that now. But just this slide, which I've popped together and popped into these notes just gives you a state of play from each jurisdiction around safe system assessment requirements at a state level or a jurisdictional level. And you can see most jurisdictions have made commitments that safe system assessments will be done on new or altered infrastructure. So if some reasonable public funds are going to be spent to change the road environment, there is a mandated requirement in most jurisdictions that a safe system assessment is undertaken. And so you'll find that in the Queensland TMR road safety policy there. That requires it. They don't specify what level of project. It's just everything in that says we will do safe system assessment. And we're seeing some local governments sort of following suit on that. New South Wales more recently, in the more recent Road Safety Action Plan, has that commitment to safe system assessment, feasibility, functional design, and detailed design stages for transport for New South Wales infrastructure projects. That's a big commitment. That's good to see. And Victoria, of course, was one of the first to do this. And it's in the safe system assessment guidelines there with some particular dollar figures of projects that mandate safe system assessments. South Australia's got exactly the same as Victoria, and the other jurisdictions are doing other bits and pieces. Western Australia, and we do have Western Australia on the call, slightly going about things very differently in terms of no sort of government mandate on safe system assessments. There are people using it as a good tool, but it doesn't sit within that mandated stuff that the state's putting out. So that's a little bit of background there. Now, the safe system, this diagram here over this side, this was when I was in Vic Roads back in the day in the road safety department and working at an sort of an Austroads level on implementing the safe system into Australia and trying to, get this concept and get everybody on board. We were using this diagram to start with. Now, I'm going to just talk through this a little bit. At the middle of the diagram, human tolerance to physical force. Human tolerance to physical force. Actually, before I do that, I better give out a prize because I've just proved to you that we do give out prizes. Can anybody tell me what year Australia committed to the safe system? Have a guess. You're never marked on anything in the live sessions. You're just marked in the after course, so you can have a guess at this. So pop it in the chat. Have a guess. What year do you think Australia signed up to the safe system? The federal government said, yep, we're going to adopt the safe system approach to road safety as the way we're going to address road trauma. Good, seeing some guesses coming in. Well done. Nobody's quite got it yet, but I'm going to give it to the closest shortly. And pop it into the chat. Oh, there we go. Somebody got it on the dot. 2004 in Australia. Oh, it looks like a username, so I'm not sure who it is. But Loretta will find that. We have a raised hand. I'm not sure if that's an accidental raised hand from Rick or Rick wants to talk. I'll let Loretta... oh, no, I think that was an accidental raised hand. It's Dana. Okay. Okay. So, yeah, 2004. So it's been around a while, hasn't it? The idea of the safe system. And so this wasn't about 2003 as we were doing this debate, but human tolerance to physical force at the center of the safe system. It's a weird thing in one sense to put at the middle of a transport sort of philosophy, but human tolerance to physical force. Interesting. Then there was the speeds, the roads and the roadsides, and the vehicles as levers that could be pulled to ensure that things stay within human tolerance to physical force. there was a circle drawn around that, and that was the safe system. That was what it was. The reason there was then some debate, quite intense debate, it was like the room kind of split, and half the room was saying, hey, like, have we not forgotten the road users? They need to be safe. They have to act alert and compliant and be safe, or you can't have a safe system. And the other part of the room was saying, no, humans are pretty bad in the sense of make mistakes all the time, do inappropriate thing, takes risks, all sorts of human things that happen. And we need to create a system that is impenetrable to that, to humans being human. And that debate raged. And then in the end, they put this sort of alert and compliant square around it to try to, move things along. Right? Anyway, that went through, and then a couple of years later, they threw that out because of that. And they brought it around to, well, lots of different things started popping out. That was the federal government one that came next, and lots of different diagrams of the safe system. Everyone went with circles. And I'm going to use this one just for simplicity to talk to. We still have, like, humans are vulnerable in the middle of this system. And we've got a few other things that are key principles of the safe system. One is that people make mistakes. And so understanding that we are going to be trying to design a system that can accommodate mistakes, because that's still humans controlling this system. We have a shared responsibility, and shared responsibility is an interesting one in the sense that it's actually in there in the safe system to say, we as, system designers in different forms. I mean, we're predominantly focused on the infrastructure, most of us here, but system designers are wider than just that. But we have a responsibility regardless of what the human has done. So even if it's been inappropriate speed, or they've fallen asleep, or they've done other things like that, we have to say, what could we have done to either stop this crash happening or to make it so the people involved are able to walk away or have minor medical treatment, but live a normal, healthy life. Now, the shared responsibility one has been misinterpreted by people to say, oh, the humans have to do things appropriately. It's more targeted at us. Now, around there, we've got these levers. We can alter things associated with the road and the roadside environment, with the vehicles themselves, with the speed of travel. And yes, there are things that still can be done to improve road user behavior. And there's also thinking about, after a crash does occur, how we provide medical treatment as quickly and effectively as possible. So that's essentially the safe system. At the center of the safe system, we're thinking about humans and the protection of human life. We have an aspiration of zero death and serious injury. We're aiming at that. Now, Austroads and most jurisdictions are setting a date for zero death and serious injury in road transport, and sort of actually planning how that might be able to happen. Anybody got a guess on the date that, Austroads has said, and most jurisdictions have also agreed to? Anybody know the date where we are aiming at zero death and serious injury? Madge has got it, 2050. So 2050 is the aspiration for zero death and serious injury on the road network. We have a lot of work to do, and there's going to be significant changes needed across these elements and pillars. We're having great advancements in technology around vehicles, but we still need to understand how we are going to alter the road and the road environment and manage speeds within that envelope, and also understand what the expectations of a road user are, being realistic in humans making mistakes and failures. So prize for match there. So when we think about the principles of the SAFE system, we've got them there. That aspiration of no death or serious injury, people make mistakes, shared responsibility, and people are vulnerable. This one gets some people a bit hot under the collar. They don't, they just can't visualize what this would be like. And I say, don't particularly worry about that. Just take every individual decision we're making out there and just ask, well, are we just factoring in some death and serious injury? Or are we genuinely actually trying to eliminate death and serious injury? That's the key question to be asking. Because a lot of things we do are just, well, we'll get a little bit of improvement in safety, but not actually substantially address the systemic issue. So let's just jump out of road transport for a second, and we'll go to manufacturing of widgets as a little comparison on safety culture, just to get us thinking a little bit again. Back in the day, in manufacturing widgets, manufacturing something, it was a fairly open system, and you had kids would be given some money to clean machines, and workers would sort of come in and out, and they'd get some sort of training. They'd be told how to do it, and they'd be told there's dangerous parts of it. This is dangerous here. This could crush you. This could rip an arm off. And they were told, hey, okay, you have to be safe here. You have to be safe within this system. That's what we would call a pathological safety culture, which is where we push the responsibility of safety in an unsafe system to the individual. Then it evolves up a safety culture. It goes to what we call a reactive safety culture, where, okay, the machines that are consistently ripping arms off and crushing people, they are addressed. They are changed in some description, whether it be a guards put on it or some sort of cutoff switch or the like, to address that particular problem. Then there's this elevation up to what we call a calculating safety culture, which essentially says the economists get involved, and they say, well, actually, we've analyzed all these factories, and if we invest in guards for all these different machines, we will, over time, reduce the number of payouts to injured parties and the families of workers that are killed. And that's going to be good. Less payouts, and actually the machines aren't down, and so we're producing more widgets, so we are able to make more money. So this investment of, I don't know, £30,000, there was pounds back in these days, is actually going to return £90,000 over the next 10 years, and we've given it a benefit cost ratio of 3, right? So that's what we call a calculating safety culture. Where we go to from there is what we are aspiring towards, what is safe system aligned, which is what we refer to as a proactive safety culture, which says we need this very high level of safety, and we will make widgets within the envelope of that safety. If we go outside of the envelope of safety that we've set, widget production will stop until we're back into that envelope of safety. Now that makes sense for us in manufacturing. Like WorkSafe will stop all production in a factory if they believe something has stepped outside of the risk safety envelope. And the last thing you need to do is maintain that high level of safety. It's like that needs continual maintenance at a cultural sense. You need to continue to ensure the culture of safety is there. And of course, all of the equipment associated with safety is maintained. So when we think about the road transport system, as I'm sure you've already made this analogy in your mind, we have parts of the road system sitting in most of these, but we certainly have huge pathological safety approaches, which are essentially that we are handing out licenses to people, sending them out into what is an unsafe system and telling them that they have to be safe. It's all on them. We do certainly address those areas where multiple fatals are occurring and multiple serious injuries, and we address them, and we've still got black spot programs up and running, and where we do that reactive safety culture. There is calculating. Oh my gosh, is there ever calculating? Like there's transport economics and BCRs for road safety and road safety investments. But we do have proactive stuff in the road system. We certainly see some good proactive things coming out now with sort of continuous safety barriers on a lot of new major road projects, which is a good indication of proactivity in the sense that it's not waiting to see where people leave the road and they're putting a little bit of barrier here and there. And it's not in the sense determined based on a BCR. It's an integral part of the project. And I always give that analogy of the high-rise building. You know, they're building a new high-rise apartment building, and it's got balconies. I mean, it would just be insane to build it with no railings and say, we'll just see where people fall off, and then we'll put some barriers at those locations. Or maybe we'll do it like a little bit risk-based, and we'll put it on the outside of curbs of the balconies. Of course not. Like it's fundamental. It can't be built if they can't do that. And we're moving, some of our new major roads into that sort of categorization and thinking, because essentially the forces are pretty much the same. Falling off the 10th floor, leaving the road, hitting a tree, 100 kilometers an hour, it's about the same. So, why one is sort of about in a very different way to another is interesting. So we're trying to challenge that. So certainly we do have some proactivity. I think one of the earliest proactive approaches, even though it wasn't like full where we'd like it to be, but school speed zones was a good one. I was heavily involved in the introduction of school speed zones. And if you do standard transport economics calculations on school speed zones, they are a bad investment, right? Because, this is standard. This is how an economist would look at it. They would say, well, how many vehicles a day go through these areas? How much time are we costing each of those vehicles by making it slower during these times of the day? And add up all of those vehicles and all of that time and multiply it by standard hourly rate for an Australian worker, or, in terms of economic productivity, I don't know, it's about $88 an hour or whatever. Get this massive cost as such. All right. So then they put that cost over there and they go, what's the benefit? What's the benefit we're going to get? How many kids are we going to save as a result of this? And then they'll put a dollar value on a kid's life. And they'll say, well, actually, it's going to cost us more than we're going to get saving in kids' lives in terms of the economic productivity of these kids. And so it's a bad investment. Now, how grotesque is that? Like, just basically saying there's not enough kids killed. So it's a bad investment. Well, no, we can enter into these proactive spaces and say, no, we demand a high level of safety, and we will operate the system within that envelope. And it's not an economic argument and discussion when it comes to human life and health. Now, all that being said, I'm somewhat realistic in understanding there's not unlimited money out there, and you need an objective way to determine if you're going to build and upgrade the sewer system, or you're going to build a new roundabout, or you're going to, how do you make decisions on what to invest in as a society, and benefit cost ratios are a attempt at a standard decision making, or the framework that you can make those calls. But the point is that safety should not be something that's thrown into the trade-off and the balancing. Safety is sets the precondition, right? And then you start to go into those sort of debates and discussions. Yeah, so it's an interesting space. And what we're trying to do is move the transport system and the decisions we make around streets and roads into the proactive safety culture space. A hand went up again, but that might have been another mistake. Oh no, it is come back. Shall we hear from Justin? Do you want to unmute yourself, Justin?
Cool.
Hello.
Hi. How you going?
Good.
I just had a question. So in terms of the proactive, between the proactive and calculating, you touched on a really good point, and I think it's an excellent point. In fact, having sort of had to deal with a number of projects, trying to prioritize them, or work in that environment where they prioritize them.
Yes.
And I don't know if this has sort of come along for many projects, but I've come across something called wider economic benefits, where people using these wider economic benefits to justify more social projects.
Yeah.
And I think I've always thought that we should be putting a greater value on non-financial elements in determining which projects go ahead.
Absolutely. I think you're right. And there is more and more sort of understanding of acknowledgement of the sort of externalities, as the economists would call them, things that aren't, directly in the traditional transport economic models and calculations. So I think there is more and more coming along. Safety is a really interesting one, in the sense that, and I'll touch on this later on in today's session, but the ability or the desire to blame an individual for a crash is so rife and so integrated into our society that people are less inclined to utilize the safety externality and not as an economic feature. I will explain that a little bit more. But thank you, Justin. Thanks for the input.
No problems.
That's excellent. I'll drop you away. But yeah, there's a good example. You can pop your hand up anytime you want, or of course, type it into the chat as well if you want. Yeah, so interesting space in there. Let's keep ticking along. And I'll pop up a little quiz just to do a little bit of get you doing a few things. So you are not marked on this quiz. This is just recapping what I've been talking about there, that little discussion with Justin as well. Just making sure we're all on the same page of the safe system before I jump into the next little bit. So hopefully that's popped up on your screen, multiple choice. Don't get too concerned because you're not marked on it. In fact, we don't even know who fills out what, but we like to see what the group's saying. I'll give you a couple of minutes I'll give you a minute to do that. We will have a halftime break in about 15 minutes as well, so you'll be able to fill up your coffee at that point. Now, you haven't been told the second one of these, the Usain Bolt one. I'll give it 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And let's end that. And let's share the results. So, yes, most of you are onto it. So maybe I should have highlighted the not, which is not a key principle of the SAFE system. So we're not aiming for no mistakes. I mean, that would be great in some utopian world for nobody to make any mistakes, but we're realistic. We understand it's humans. Humans are involved. Humans are pedestrians. Humans are cyclists. Humans are drivers, and humans make mistakes all the time. I've made many mistakes already this morning, as I'm sure you have. They're very minor little things, but sometimes they're bigger things. And that's not our aim. What we're trying to do is minimize mistakes through anything we can do, but manage the mistakes when they happen. Minimize and manage. Okay, occasionally a firewall blocks the poll popping up. So don't worry. As I said, you're not marked on it. And it's just there to reiterate what we have been talking about. Well, the second one actually here was Usain Bolt crossing the finish line in his world record 100-meter sprint. What speed was he traveling in kilometers per hour? And probably some of you are doing back of envelope calculations there to try to work that out. Did you take into account that he had to accelerate up from stationary as well? So it wasn't just as easy as that. The answer is 44 kilometers an hour is the speed crossing the finish line. Average speed might have been more closer to the 34. So let's stop sharing that and keep going. Why on earth am I asking about Usain Bolt in a road safety quiz? Well, I always like to give this analogy, and I've certainly talked about this with some of you before, but let's park a car at the end of Usain Bolt's lane. Maybe, I don't know, like a 2015 Toyota Camry, as I like to use that as a car. We park it at the end of Usain Bolt's lane, and he runs down there at 44 kilometers an hour, and bang, he hits that car. Right? Will he survive that? Well, the answer is yes. Most likely, yes, he will survive. I mean, first of all, he's like built like a fridge, so he can handle a lot of force. Pick any of us mere mortals up and throw us at a car at 44 kilometers an hour. We're starting to get less likely to survive. And certainly, if pick up your parents and throw them at a car at 44 kilometers an hour, they're not going to likely survive. Well, my parents certainly wouldn't. We have this sort of information around cars. Now, this is now car travel speed, which is very slightly different in terms of the physics, but it's generally about the same. Car speed striking pedestrian. Okay. And down the bottom here, we've got collision speed, speed of impact. Just think about that as speed of impact. Don't think about speed limit. Just think about this is the physics, the biomechanics of it, speed of impact, and the chance that it results in death to some pedestrian in our population. And you can see there, down around that sort of 10, 20, 30 kilometer per hour, it's generally survivable. Up around the 50, 60, 70, 80 kilometers per hour, we're pretty sure it's going to result in death to the pedestrian struck at those speeds. the great man, there he is, comes in a little bit up there. But actually, there's a reasonable correlation between a human's running speed at maximum and their ability to survive running into a tree or a brick wall. Okay, you can test that if you want. Run as fast as you can at a tree, and you should survive, and you should recover to lead a normal, healthy life based on your maximum running speed and your ability to withstand physical force. It's a general correlation. But there's a really interesting aspect to this, and it's this kick-up point. Like, it starts to go exponentially bad around that 30 kilometer per hour mark. So, small increases in speed above that start to get really big in terms of impacting more of our community, in terms of their ability to withstand physical force. It's not that there's no risk this side of it, but that's a really exponential kick-up point. And we know, these sort of things are survivable. Hopefully that streamed through for you. But he broke a few ribs, came back, and next year won the gold medal. It is not friendly, but it's survivable and recoverable. And that's how we need to think about force out there and potential kinetic energy in the road environment. We don't want these crashes to happen, but when they do, how do we make it so it's more like this, where they're injured, but they recover and they lead a normal, healthy life, rather than they hold lifelong debilitating injuries or death. And we have that information for some other crash types. So this is a right angle crash where the bullet vehicle, and this is what we call the bullet vehicle here, the one that does the damage. This is target vehicle. Bullet vehicle speed coming in around that 50 kilometers per hour is where it starts to go really bad. And that'll be the death to the target vehicle driver in this strike. And in head-on crashes, we know it's about the 70 kilometer per hour, where it's around 70 kilometers, and that's the speed of each vehicle. So some people say, oh, so that's 140 kilometer per hour crash because they're both going at 70. Well, it's not. I mean, it is if you were standing in the middle of it and you got crushed, or if one of them was a tiny little smart car and the other was a road train and it got pushed back at 70 kilometers per hour. But the force on the individual occupants of this, assuming they're the same mass, same speed, and they hit and they stop, and they essentially go from 70 to 0. It's the same as running into a brick wall at 70. There's a good Mythbusters episode that does exactly that. If you are not convinced by what I've said, they do what they do in Mythbusters, which is put accelerometers in cars and crash them into each other and then into brick walls, and they sort of prove this point. So 70 kilometers per hour is where we start to know things are going to go pretty bad after that. So this is interesting. This starts to give us some parameters in understanding about that human tolerance to physical force. And that's a really integral part of our thinking these days. We, generally draw a line at that point where the curves exponentially kick up. There's a lot of research and investigation around the world, people doing PhDs on trying to, update these and be more accurate with specific vehicle types, add in other crash types and other vehicles and the like. And so lots is happening. This provides a pretty general bit of guidance around that 30 kilometers per hour or below when we've got pedestrians who are possibly going to be struck. We've got 50 kilometers per hour or below bullet vehicle speed in that right angle, 70 kilometers per hour below for the head-on crashes. It gives us a nice, a nice bit of a start in thinking about human tolerance to physical force. But we've tried to help you out a little bit more. And I put this into when I was involved in updating the Austroads Guide to Road Safety Part 6, which is actually road safety auditing. But we want auditors to start to think about this as well as safe system assessors. But listing a number more crash types and speeds, and sort of starting to say, well, it's going to be a grade of some description. And it's going to be really bad in this black, and it's going to be pretty great in this green, and things will appear in different spots. So we can understand generally, and spoiler alert, but later in the course, we'll be talking about putting quantification to it with numbers. And so you'll be coming back and using this sort of thing to quantify how bad the incident is going to be. Now, any questions at this stage, Loretta?
Just a comment here from Darren, just on the previous slide, based on the graph. It is interesting, school zones are 40 kilometres per hour and not 30 kilometres per hour.
Yeah, so it's a good point. And actually, as I mentioned earlier, that the 40 didn't get us to quite where we kind of want to be. Yeah, the whole alteration of travel speeds in the system is a work in progress, and the massive pushback and reluctance to 40 at the time was unbelievable. We were, had all of the usual stuff we hear. Well, we'll have to be walking with a red flag out the front of it, cars, and my car can't even go. My car doesn't. It'll stall at 40, and these sorts of ridiculous things. So the ability to get that at that point in time was huge, but at a fundamental safe system energy level, 30 or 20 would be far more appropriate. Now, the interface with planning and how we think about the management of the road system in its totality is hugely important there, where we just need to be better at not trying to have schools and school kids crossing roads, which we've defined as major motorized through routes, because those two are fundamentally opposed things to be doing. So the planning side of it needs to be better. But when we get into the specifics of a safe system assessment, we'll be clear to understand the impact that would have if a strike of even 40 kilometers per hour was to occur with a kid. Okay. Yeah. So Justin's put in there. So I just saw that pop over the corner of my eye. Some of the controversy around the recent Yarra City Council 30 kilometer per hour speed zones, which areas, which shows you some of the challenges we still face in what are obvious and reasonable speed reductions in highly urbanized, pedestrianized areas. But there's a long way to go in ensuring that everybody has that understanding. I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. I'm just going to go through this, and then I'm going to give you a little exercise to do while you fill up your coffee and have a stretch and the like. So we'll, this is a diagram that pops up in road safety all the time, and it is the bane of my existence. I've been doing road safety stuff for 25 years. This diagram absolutely infuriates me when I see it. And it's not because it's wrong. Okay. What it is it's a crash causation output. And this was one that was done in 2003. I've used it. It was focused just on drivers, but you can do it for all road users. It's been done. It's about done every decade. Once a decade is the world's biggest crash causation study. It just keeps coming. And every time they find that the road user, driver in this case, is 90 to 95% of the cause of crashes. Driver error, driver doing something wrong, falling asleep, being distracted, speeding, driver error. The roads play a small sort of role in crash causation, and the vehicles an even smaller role. So vehicle malfunction causing the crash, right? The reason I absolutely hate this diagram is not because of anything in that research was wrong. That was brilliant research, amazing studies, like millions and millions of dollars invested in that research. It's what happens when policymakers and those responsible for road safety get this. They then go, well, what's the logical conclusion? We need to change the driver. We need to fix the driver. We need to alter the driver. And that is the hardest thing possible to do. What we need to say is that that's a system failure. And we need to alter the system around that. And we need to acknowledge that for the last, well, since driving has been a thing, humans have made mistakes, and they continue to make mistakes at about the same general rate. We have some controls in place that have lessened particular aspects of it, but mistake making is so integral to being a human. Plus, it is the least sustainable of any of these elements, in the sense that you can work so hard at changing an individual's driver's behavior, all right, and then another one comes along and you got to do the same. But if you fundamentally fix the system around this, right, that's a sustainable safety entity. So what we need to say is every failure is a system failure. I took this from Austroads, who put driver excess and driver inexperience as sort of out here. I would like to see these just fully encapsulated in here. They're just system failures as well. But there's this sort of hugely excessive stuff, driving 120 through residential streets and people who have never been ever taught the basics of control of a vehicle and these sort of things. But I say, why on earth are we having a system where a vehicle could possibly do those speeds? It's not like the technology is the problem. It's our acceptance of systemic change. And interestingly, the Centre for Automotive Safety Research at the University of Adelaide did a huge study where they looked at human error in the road transport system and understanding and unpacking that into these common categories: slips, lapses, mistakes, unintentional violations, and what is referred to as deliberate violations. And what they discovered is above the line here is 70-ish% of excuse me, 70% of death and serious injury. So we've got about 30% sitting down here. So we're saying 70% of death and serious injury are people generally trying to do the right thing, or not, or just, they're not out there making those deliberate violating acts. I mean, it's sort of almost premeditated violation acts. It gets a bit murky as to exactly where that line's drawn. The media would lead you to believe that, it's all below the line because that makes for a juicy story. But there is just a lot of people falling asleep, being distracted by their kids in the back seat, trying to change the radio station, dropping their coffee in their lap, just not having enough time to stop when the kid steps out in front. All of these sorts of things that make up the bulk of our death and serious injury. All right. So what we're going to do is give you 7 minutes or so, 5 minutes, and it's just trying to establish a little bit of this, traditional approach to road safety, to the safe system approach, and connecting one to another. So we've gone from victim blaming, which is to point our finger and say, well, you shouldn't have fallen asleep, to saying, one of these others. Now, we're going to do this with a poll, but if the poll doesn't come up, you can type it into the chat with like 1D, 2A, 3C, or whatever you want. So let's get that poll up, please. and I'm going to give you 5 minutes. So you can do it on the poll or you can do it in the chat, and make sure you have a stretch, and we're back into it in, well, now 4 minutes and 45 seconds. I'll give it another 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we'll share that. Let's maybe, actually, we'll stop sharing that. Just having a quick look there. We'll just do it on the screen. Some of these could have gone to multiple places. So it's just trying to reinforce some of that thinking that, you know, that idea of victim blaming or you know, looking for that human fault. It's understanding and recognizing human error and trying to minimize the consequence and that shared responsibility. By no means are we trying to, are we giving up on trying to make the road environment, you know, free of things that could confuse or elicit mistakes, but it's understanding and recognizing that humans like limits. Emphasis on road user education and compliance. More effort now under a safe system, create a forgiving system. We will still have education and compliance aspects to the system, but just more of that understanding. Crash reduction. So consequence, severe injury minimization. 4 pillars action independently to trying to optimize those pillars in an interaction, and mobility safety balance to maximizing safe mobility. So I hope that sort of managed to help you think about the safe system a little bit at a philosophical level. Ian Cameron, who's a Western Australian, I think summed it up nicely a while back now, but we need a paradigm shift in road safety policy to stop the road death epidemic, and we need it now. It is unrealistic to expect that education enforcement alone will bring the needed step change. Even road users who know and follow the rules make mistakes. A safe system creates an environment. A simple mistake will no longer kill people or seriously injure people. Should be added in that as well. All right, let's get into a little bit of the road environment, and let's have a look at the Melbourne Highway, which I think is an interesting case study on a number of levels. It's got you can see a newly placed central barrier system, wire rope system in a narrow flushed median, and what we call a 2+1. So 2 lanes in one direction and 1 lane in the other, and then sort of every, you know, kilometre or a half or so, it just swaps over as to which side of the road gets the overtaking opportunity. There's another little bit of that you can see. So you can see barrier in the middle of the road, 100 km/h speed environment. Now, without knowing much about this road at all and the development of this project, there was a lot of trouble in the planning, design, and development of this project in terms of hurdles, challenges, things that stop this getting in, people coming up with reasons why this can't be put in, this central barrier system, and things to get over. I want you to just pop in the chat. What do you think some of those things were that really hampered this project getting on the ground? Just pop them into the chat. And I think there was one question at the top there that I'll try and address, but Loretta, make sure I don't forget. So, starting to see them coming in, and I'll give out a few prizes here, I think. Loretta, get your prize giving pen ready. Okay. So, cost. Adam, yep. Prize for Adam, because that's right. Like Anna was questioning, can we justify this cost? Land acquisition. Again, yes, slight bit of widening and some, but it's actually less. But yeah, let's give Daniela a prize there. Maintenance. So maintenance on a number of levels. So Madge gets a prize there in terms of not just, oh, the barrier will be hit and it needs to be maintained, which was one. They said, well, we just can't, we can't afford to maintain more stuff. But it was also like maintenance of the surface out here. Like they needed to do a patch or something like that. Well, where do they put vehicles? How do they safely do that? So that was one. One on wildlife crossings. Yes, so animals, people concerned about animals being trapped on the road and the like. And Adam, oh, it's a different Adam. We've got two Adams, do we? Adam Biggs there, emergency services access. Yeah, absolutely. Like emergency services associated with getting, if this was on fire up here, how would, and they were going this way, how would they get to it? What if this vehicle was, going speeding and a police car was here, how would they get to this vehicle? All sorts of things like that. Justin, motorcyclist. Yes, the motorcycle community were active in that. There's a prize there. I better stop giving out prizes here because I'll run us out of prizes in this first one because everything here is very good. All of these things were issues. I'm just reading through them. Good. Thank you, everybody. Lots of good stuff there. And the reason I bring this up is because safe system assessments didn't exist at the time of this project. And if they did, I think they would have been very helpful. The reason for that is, okay, we're changing the road environment. And this is not something that was commonly done at the time, okay? But so what they did was a road safety audit. Now, what is a road safety audit's mandate? It is to identify risks and issues, and that's a really good thing to do, okay? A lot of the things you've brought up there were brought up in road safety audits, and so the report would come in and it would just list lots of risks, and it made the project look very risky, right? There was no independent sort of tool to actually say how effective it will be in reducing death and serious injury, or how much better it aligns with safe system principles, or how good it is. But that's what a safe system assessment does. It actually quantifies the benefit of this project in terms of safety, and then proceeds to try to do what's possible in terms of adjusting any residual risks that may occur as a result. So as we innovate, as we change the road environment, as we improve things, a safe system assessment is a really wonderful tool for us to be able to then go forward and say, hey, this is going to be a massive reduction in death and serious injury, better alignment with safe system principles. Yes, there are some challenges that we've got to work through, and we should respectfully work through all of those and try and do the best we can. But overall, this is going to be a massive improvement for our community. And it somewhat links in with the question that came in earlier, which was, can safe system assessments justify proactive measures despite of low BCRs? Well, the answer is sort of yes, to a degree, in the sense of the safe system assessment is something that's been committed to, okay? So we are essentially going back to like the railings on those high-rise buildings and saying, you can't even start this idea without having these features and this operation. All right. So it's not about a benefit cost ratio at that stage. It should be absolutely fundamental to any new infrastructure. Now, if we go to upgrades, what we're upgrading and where we're upgrading and how we're upgrading, and that becomes a little bit more murky, and that's more just a prioritization challenge and working out what the best thing to do is at what point. But you should be able to have all the roads in your whole network and know what their end safe system state should look like. And then you work towards that. And a safe system assessment should be there to push that. Now, I try to, my job is in a very short period of time to instill safe system principles thinking into people's minds. It is very murky, very complex, very challenging, and how it interacts in public life and all of those infrastructure challenges that we've got. But I'll sort of give you the ideal and how it should be, and we can discuss some of those murky areas as we go. Safe system assessments would have made this job so much easier to actually get on the ground. Interestingly, that one got hit not too long after it was in place, and the engineer responsible for that project got a call from the person, one of the people involved in this strike, and I'm sure many of you have been on the other end of those phone calls, or any call from the public you think you're going to get shouted at, that's for sure. But they actually just wanted to thank them and said, I've been driving that road for many years, and yeah, I've never had that barrier there, but then this time it had the barrier, and then somebody came directly at me and hit the barrier, must have saved our lives. Anyway, the engineer who got that call was smart enough to say, "Can I have your details? I think our comms people might like to talk to you." And they made a little video, which we've put into the learning management system, just a 2-minute video. And I think it really captures nicely, like, the fact that one of the drivers fell asleep. They're very open with the fact they fell asleep, right? And they left the road, they left their lane. They hit the barrier system. If the barrier system wasn't there, they probably would have killed themselves and others off a mistake of falling asleep. Gee, we don't want people to fall asleep on the road, and we should be trying to encourage people to not drive in that state, but they will. There's so much of that happens, and it'll continue to happen. And for us to, push and just point our finger and say, well, people shouldn't fall asleep, is not the way we're going about it. But this is a beautiful example of safe system in action, because the infrastructure just did its job, made it so the panel beater got some work, but nobody was killed or seriously injured. And yeah, it's going to cost us a bit to put the posts back and fix it up, but that's the price we pay to live in a society that protects everyone. Okay, let me jump into a few other little bits and pieces. We're talking, this is a very sort of general philosophical start, and then we're going to really, next session, we're going to hone into infrastructure, and then we're straight into assessment methodology and getting you out there and doing assessments. But you cannot do a safe system assessment without having a good grasp of the fundamentals of the safe system. And safer road users, vehicles, and the like, we, as safe system assessors, think holistically about the system and its interaction. Yes, we're predominantly focused on the road infrastructure and the speeds, the road and roadside infrastructure and the speeds, but we do understand a bit more about road user and road user education. And this can integrate into a safe system assessment. It's good fundamental stuff you should know as any road safety practitioner. What can we expect out of education, encouragement, enforcement, or licensing systems, or entry into the system as such? So a couple of little things on that. We know that, of course, young people take on road safety messages really well. And they're wonderful at, instilling a nice lifelong safety behaviors. But it's also they're nice little Trojan horses into their parents as well, with some safety messages around, you make sure they all know everybody has to be wearing a seatbelt in the vehicle, and then they will sort of put that message out to others. So we know there's good benefit that can be gained there. We know that young drivers are most at risk, and we know a few things that really work well, giving them hours on the road, in the road environment with a supervising driver is hugely beneficial. Prolonging different activities we know of high risk, like multiple passengers, mobile phone use of any description, alcohol of any description, any amounts and the like. So that's what we call a graduated licensing system, where you release some of these as you go. And certainly getting them into safer vehicles is a hugely beneficial thing if it can be done. I popped this up there as an interesting one. It's a campaign from the TAC in Victoria that basically says if you text and drive, your kids are going to text and drive. Now, that has hit the nail on the head in terms of addressing what we refer to as individual risk versus collective risk. Because if you tell an individual driver, if you text and drive, you're more likely to be involved in a crash, they will say, yeah, I don't believe you. But there's a number of reasons. They've probably been doing it for the last 10 years and they haven't been involved in a crash as a result. So they're getting reinforcement of, I can do this safely. The actual odds of it are minuscule. So at an individual level, that is. So for an individual, their chance of texting and driving and then being involved in a death or serious injury at an individual level are absolutely minuscule. But we don't do this at an individual risk level. We do it at a collective risk level. So we're adding up all of those minuscule risks to a big issue for society. But for them, they're hearing it as an individual risk, and they just don't believe it. So what we have to do, and this plays out in a lot of road safety, is come back to more tangible understanding of risk and more logical understanding of risk. So we need to talk to them in something that they're actually going to believe, which is if you text and drive, your kid will text and drive, and they don't want that. It's the same with speed limits, for example. The number of times I've seen people come out with speed limit changes, reductions like 100 to 80, and a media release around doing it for people's safety. And I'm like, that is not what the driver reads. The driver will, because they've driven that road for however long, they've not had a crash. They think it's all the, lunatics driving crazy that is the problem. And so what we need to do is be smarter at thinking about other levers we can pull to convince people on safety. I mean, people are far more willing to accept reductions in speed on these rural high-speed roads for things like protection of wildlife. They are way more accepting of that than protection of humans. Because humans, they blame for specific mistakes. Fuel consumption, environmental impact, these sorts of things are far more tangible at an individual level. So something to think about how we do that. Anyway, so I'll pop that out there as a way of thinking about some of those risk factors. What we know works, whole of a school approach to road safety throughout the years and instilling some of the fundamental basics. Education combined with other partner activities such as enforcement, support for community education. A lot of the community are, there's segments of the community highly invested in improving road safety, often touched by road trauma in one way or another. Our role is to ensure that they're doing evidence-based initiatives. I see a lot of times where the community is investing their time, their effort, their own money often in things that there's pretty great research and evidence to show it doesn't help at all, and sometimes even makes things worse. Graduated licensing, I mentioned. Education targeting especially motivated groups, parents being the biggest one in that. So you can target some of your campaign and information at the parents to get their kids into safer vehicles or put restrictions or the like, and that's a really good way to do things. I'll talk about this last one in a bit, but just some things that don't work here, and this is for your future understanding. At an individual level, fear tactics don't tend to work. So you can't really scare people into being safe on the roads. Now, there are some segments of the community where fear tactics are effective in behavior change. They are the safest people by a long shot before any fear tactics come out, and it causes some major disturbance to them anyway. The people who are more in the risk-taking categories and the like they just don't resonate with these tactics. Any advanced driver training course, anything done at speed so anything where people are taught to get out of skids, skid pan training, anything high-speed braking, anything like that, significantly increases the risk of death and serious injury after they've completed the training. That is one of the world's best studied road safety things out there. Yet it's counterintuitive, because you'd think, well, it gives them better skills and they should be safer. Well, it's actually, you give them better skills, they take more risks. They get overconfident, they go out there, they drive faster, and the small amount of times that those new skills are relevant is absolutely swamped by the times where there's nothing that can be done about it. And that's when I see community groups sending their young males, which is like the worst thing you could do, to an advanced driver training course as a way to improve safety. And it's another one, actually, as road safety practitioners, we need to be very aware that we as individuals are not representative samples, and we do not represent research-based evidence. Because I know so many people who have done an advanced driver training course, and they believe that's the reason why they've survived. No, that's the statistical significance of that is ridiculous, right? So you need to go back to research and evidence bases on these sort of things, not your individual experiences. One-off events, driver simulators, there's nothing really at this stage that having significant improvements in driver behavior as simulators. I think that's probably a space that'll emerge and things will get better. Car racing clubs, go-karting clubs, and those sort of things are a bit like skills-based driver training. People tend to come out and take more risks the more they're involved and the more membership they have. Information-only approaches. Actually, two of these, though, fear tactics and information-only approaches, I wouldn't discount, but not in terms of changing driver or road user behavior. Okay, they won't change their individual behavior, but if you are setting a platform for legislative change, they can be somewhat effective. At least the people know why you're about to put in place new laws, changes to the infrastructure, whatever it is. Those can be effective in certain circumstances. This is used a lot. It shows crashes. Now, these are these are just raw crash numbers, but it actually, when you do it by crashes per 100 million vehicle kilometers traveled, it's not that dissimilar. When drivers have a supervising driver next to them and they're in the learner phase, there's very low crashes. As soon as they go out on their own, it goes off the charts and it comes down, and then it just flattens itself out. And so anybody who ever says, oh, well, no, the problem is people don't know how to drive, and they're, if everybody was, like Michael Schumacher or Daniel Ricciardo style drivers with those skills, we wouldn't have any road trauma. That's absolutely not true. I mean, these people are safer than these people. That shows that immediately that it's not necessarily a skills-based thing. There's a whole lot more going on to that. I think encouragement's something we haven't done a lot of in road safety, and we can do a lot more. We can use incentivizing campaigns more, trying to encourage people to drive safely in one way or another, or ride safely or walk safely. I mean, there's simple incentivizing campaigns such as just, if you get through your probationary period with no demerit points, you get a free license, which some jurisdictions are are doing. There's some evidence around that actually seems to be somewhat effective. So that's, that's good. There's other incentivizing campaigns out there. Giving specific behavioral change techniques as opposed to just generally drive safely sort of stuff. If you say, take a break every 2 hours of driving, that's a very specific message, and it's clear and people can action that. Some of the marketing and advertising gets a bit hard. Comedy is quite effective for recall of message, so that's good. Does it change behavior? Sometimes it's a bit hard to evaluate a lot of this. We've put a handful of different road safety ads into the learning management system for you to have a look at, and some of them are quite witty, quite funny, and do get excellent recall. And some of them have managed to see some behavioral change initiatives as well. But we'll see more and more this try and change a culture and trying to get people to think safe system a little bit. You've probably seen this type of ad, which has a video with it, but it's talking about other people making mistakes, not saying, you're going to make mistakes, so slow down. Other people are, and we all need to slow down a bit. So it's a sort of alteration, thinking about mistake making. We've got many different variations on human tolerance to physical force understanding in the community. Some of you may have met Graham, seen Graham. Graham's a life-size sculpture, scarily human-looking thing, which was designed by, biomechanics, people doing biomechanics of injury of crashes, and some really talented artists. This is what you'd have to look like to survive the forces on our road system in common crash scenarios, and trying to get people questioning why we have so much force out there. So it's an interesting one. I use the Usain Bolt analogy, but this is another way to do it. Enforcement is something that will continue in road safety and plays an important sort of base role, but we really need to be clear that enforcing an unsafe system is not going to get us to where we need to be. So we need to fundamentally change the system around it. We have to be strategic with our enforcement effort. It's a huge cost, and targeting that just in the prioritization and rollout's important. There's two sort of common things in enforcement. We've got specific deterrence and general deterrence. Specific deterrence is that if you are fined for a specific thing, you won't do that again. That's the theory. General deterrence is that you could be fined for a certain thing, and you won't hopefully do that. And visual presence is very good on that general deterrent, and we know there's a thing called a halo effect. So after somebody sees an police officer, any description really, there's a halo of improved safety performance. But enforcement technology is going to be one that's going to help us within system boundaries to create this safe system, point-to-point speed cameras, different technologies to be able to keep people within enforcement areas, different in-vehicle features such as alcohol interlocks, maximum speed setting for different vehicles and the like. These are all excellent ways for us to keep our system boundaries together. We still need to make sure that the system is inherently safe, and then keep people within that system, if that makes sense. The technology is not really a challenge anymore. This is my VicRoads vehicle 17 years ago or something, which we were using intelligent speed assist devices, which would tell me the speed zone, and if I was going over the speed limit, it would be beeping at me, and then I'd get back to the office and I could download all my data of where, like, the technology has been around for so long. yeah, we could enforce all speed zones, all vehicles, all the time now. No, there would be, like, the technology is not stopping that. It's the political will of that and all sorts of privacy challenges and all these other areas. But anyways. Some key points in there around safe people, and I've put a fact sheet into the learning management system as well. And I've got to give Loretta a little bit of time to talk you through this. So I better just jump through vehicles and get ourselves ready. The vehicles are advancing quite nicely in terms of safety features, and we are altering our understanding of, you know, infrastructure design based on the forces vehicles can handle. But the limitations are still pretty big, or the difference between the forces we have available on the road system currently and the forces the vehicles can withstand to not make the humans die or have serious injuries. The frontal offset crash test is done at 64 kilometers an hour. So that's not anywhere near as fast as you could expect head-on crashes on the bulk of our road network. The side impact pole test, I'll give a prize if somebody can tell me what speed this crash is done at in an ANCAP test. So to get 5 stars, they slide your vehicle into a pole. The dummy can't have basically an acquired brain injury or death. Speed, what speed do you think? We've got 70s, 30s, 40, we've got a good range. Yeah. Oh, Loretta, you're going to have to. So it's 32 kilometers an hour. So there's 2 people there. I think somebody did 30, somebody did 34. It's 32. Used to be 29. Just shows that, you know, the speeds we travel past trees and power poles, or, you know, vehicles do, and they could be leaving the road and sliding and hitting this. It's a long, long way from what this actual test is. Yeah, so I'm just showing these to show you some of the limitations of vehicles. Does this vehicle, the Pajero, I think the Pajero got 5 stars. But it's at 2012, so yeah, it would, under the current crash test, it probably wouldn't get 5 stars, because, you know, they up there. You want to know, not only is your car a 5-star vehicle, when was it a 5-star test? As we keep progressing, and there's lots of new features. Anyway, things are improving and they're doing pretty wonderful stuff. We're now including pedestrian safety features. So bonnets pop up, or airbags over bonnets of all new vehicles have pretty much got those sorts of pedestrian safety features, giving us, I suppose, more force can be absorbed before it's transferred to the human. But the question that often comes up is, you know, why bother? Why are we really doing anything? Like, surely autonomous vehicles are just going to solve everything, aren't they? We'll all be out of a job, which I'm very much looking forward to. But unfortunately, this doesn't seem to be anytime soon. And certainly the modeling that's done by all sorts of areas shows that 2050 scenarios don't include a huge amount of these sorts of vehicles without steering wheels. And we know there's a big lag in the turnover of the fleet. We know we've still got a huge amount of work to do to get something like this genuinely out there. And then you've got to convince the public. And then you've got to factor in all of those other things that aren't even being talked about or hugely considered, which is the interaction of this sort of vehicle with pedestrians, with cyclists, with and the list goes on. There's so much to go. So really, my key takeaway here is that we cannot sit on our hands and just wait for the vehicles to solve all these issues. We need to be aware of what these vehicles are looking for and provide those features in our design. Here you can see them sort of braking by themselves, which is great. We'll see that integrate into the vehicle fleets. There you go. The leg came off the dummy there. That's an interesting one, because you can almost you still would say that's some level of success because the vehicle started braking, it hit at lower speed, and that's what we would be wanting. So we will see a lot of vehicle safety features integrate in. We're going to see more and more improvement, but we still need to fundamentally alter the physical infrastructure and speeds to complement the vehicle safety features that are emerging and coming in. Loretta.
Thank you. Just a question that's come in. Has there been any consideration with regards to different sizes of vehicles with these ratings? A 1000 kg Mazda MX-5 is a 5-star ANCAP, like a 2.25 ton Ford Ranger?
Yeah, I don't know. So I'm certainly aware of a lot of the discussion debate around size of vehicle and mass and those sorts of things. The protocol of star rating under ANCAP is quite specific and it's sort of outcome based. So yeah, I might have to take that one and ask my colleague who knows all of this inside out exactly how that interaction occurs. I'll get back to you on that one. Okay. If we're talking about speed, I'm going to go through some speed fundamentals, probably a reminder for a lot of you, but it's going to nicely get us all to the point for tomorrow's session to be able to dive into some infrastructure assessment. Okay. Travel speed and impact speed are not a linear relationship. So what I mean by that, and probably the easiest way to do this is to say, okay, 60 km/h travel speed of a vehicle. You know, somebody steps out 45 meters away, the driver needs to process that they've got to do something. That's sort of our reaction time. Then they brake and the physics sort of takes in and they'll just, stop right at that point. If we go up to 70 km/h as travel speed, 10 km/h more in travel speed, you can see that they hit at 46 km/h, not just at 10 km/h more. So we have this non-linear relationship between travel speed and impact speed. So that's an important thing to note there. And if we overlay on that those graphs we saw with Usain Bolt earlier, and there's a lot of different studies again around the world, they're generally showing that there's a power relationship, so a fourth power relationship for fatal crashes, and a third power relationship for serious injury. So if you don't remember that from maths class, I mean, it's just saying that there is, for small increases in speed, there's really quite big increases in the chance of fatal and serious and less for other, but it's not a linear relationship. So if we can adjust travel speeds down, we just see amazing benefits in terms of fatal and serious injury crashes. And that pretty much is unanimous across the board. I rewrote the Austrade's Guide to Road Safety Part 3, which is speed and speed management. Put a lot of this in. And just at one point, I just listed across from around the world, many times where speed limits had been decreased on roads, big sections of roads and road network, and it improved safety, and then vice versa. Speed limits have been increased and it had increased the number of death and serious injury. And the thing is that, very occasionally somebody pulls out some random thing where a speed limit had been increased and there had been no change in death or serious injury. Okay, they might be some rare anomaly, but it's very, very clear that it's significant in terms of speed management, speed limits, speed management, and I'll talk more about that shortly. But it is the most sort of community sensitive issue we have, speed limits, as I was talking about. This is Tasmanian data, but it tends to hold true across most jurisdictions that about half the community in this case didn't think it would improve road safety. There's been some interesting stuff actually out of Mornington Peninsula showing, framed in the right way and presented in the right way, there's a lot of support for lower speed limits. But it is interesting to do. When you talk about the severity of crash, most people understand that lower speeds will be less trauma, so that's something we can maybe work with. But again, out of this diagram, Swedish diagram, but it basically is saying here that once you know your biomechanics of injury of your population, which is pretty much the same all around the world, we got some pretty good data on that, you then understand what you've got in terms of a road environment, the users and the vehicles, and you just filter it through the appropriate speed, and you have a safe transport system. Speed is the governing factor based on what you've got. You can have very high speeds as long as you've got appropriate vehicles, roads, and road user elements. So we know safe speeds can be achieved through infrastructure and/or speed limits. Infrastructure is very effective in terms of managing, speed. So local area traffic management, highly effective. Speed limit reductions can be a little bit challenging sometimes. Explaining why a speed limit's in place is effective for acceptance and compliance. And vulnerable road users generally accepted pretty well as a reason. Noting our little Yarra study that's popped up recently. I'm just going to jump through this because I need to just give you something in the last 2 minutes before I hand over to Loretta, and I'm probably not going to get to everybody's questions. Risk has traditionally been looked at as the chance of a crash, so likelihood, times the severity of that crash. In a safe system assessment, we have taken likelihood and actually taken exposure out of it as well. So we say, how many people are exposed to a crash area, crash type? What's the chance of the crash at that location? And then how bad is it going to be? And so what we're going to do, pick up next time, is starting to unpack these three things. The number of people exposed to a crash, the chance that there will be a crash, and how bad it will be. Okay, an example of where we've eliminated exposure is to close off something, like close off this level crossing. There's a big mound of dirt there. It's a bit hard to see. Closing off a road, an intersection or the like, that's eliminated the exposure to crash. Separation, like full separation, has eliminated exposure of vehicle to cyclist crash or pedestrian crash in this location. Okay, you might have cyclist to pedestrian things to think about, but that vehicle crash has been eliminated. Likelihood is everything that reduces the chance of a crash. So here we see wide center lines, audio tactile center line, audio tactile edge line, sealed shoulders, good surface, the geometry of the road, lighting, even traffic signals and themselves. They're all just trying to stop the crash happening in the first place. Very important, continues to be important, getting everything right. But we move then to say, well, okay, what happens when the crash actually happens? Even if we got all the likelihood stuff right, humans might still crash. They will still crash. How bad is it going to be? And the speed of the incident, the angle of the incident, the vulnerability of the users all come into play. Slowing vehicles at conflict points like this, or running out that energy over over time. So if a vehicle hits a barrier and runs their energy out over a distance, it's going to be a more friendly, less severe incident. So that's where I needed to get to. And we're going to pick up just from that point tomorrow anyway. So I'm going to hand to Loretta to take you through the learning management system. I'll have a read of the questions, and if we do get time, I'll answer that.
Thanks, Ken. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, everyone. So this is the learning management system. As I mentioned earlier, I'm pretty sure everyone has logged in. If you can't find your email with the login details, check your junk or spam folders, because sometimes they do go into those folders. And if that fails, please contact me, and we'll reset your password and send you a new link. I know some people have used the system before as well. So once you do log in, you get to this dashboard, and you'll see if you've completed other courses with us. So these are my courses, but the one you want to click on, you may only see the one, or you might see multiple, is the Safe System Assessment for December. So we want to view that course, and it takes you to this page. So this is our little welcome, of course, which, as I said earlier, some people have already introduced themselves. But if you can't find the link in an email, the link to the webinar for each day this week is in here. So you can click on there. Course information will cover the agenda. So again, if you sort of want to know what we're covering, the agenda and the Zoom instructions are in there as well. And as I mentioned, the introduction. So some people have already said hello. So thank you. If everyone else wants to join in that chat, feel free. The pre-course content. So as Ken mentioned throughout today's session, there are a few videos. So this is one video to watch, as well as some more in the resources. So under resources, there's some documents that you can refer to, or that will be referred to throughout the week. So yeah, have a look through those resources, and then there's some videos here as well. So in this section here, the fact sheets, which I know Ken also mentioned earlier. So there's some fact sheets in there that will link to our website, and there's some various fact sheets that you can read through. So for today's module 1, again, more videos and the Mythbusters that Ken mentioned. But what you do need to do is complete the quiz. So once you click on here, you just need to attempt the quiz. You do need to get a 8 out of 10. Hopefully you kept track of your Wallies as well, because I believe that question is in there too. So simply click on attempt quiz and just answering the questions down the list, and then finish attempt. So that's all you need to do for today's module. Again, the presentation is here as well, so you can click on there and download the PDF. And the recording will also be uploaded here, hopefully by the end of today, once we get that. So through the learning management system, we're just working down the list throughout the week. So every day you'll have access to the new module. So module 1 today, the only task to do is your quiz. And that's it from me for the moment. Anything else, Ken?
No, that's great. So yeah, jump in, do the quiz, email Loretta if you have any challenges with that. The quiz, you shouldn't find too hard. It's what we covered in the session. We're back again tomorrow, and we, kicking off. Well, if you want to jump in for trivia a little bit early, jump in 3 minutes early or something, and we'll just ask some general trivia, a bit of fun while others join us. And after the end of next session, you get a little assignment. So you want to try to keep up to date on stuff throughout this week. With the assignment, you'll have a few days to do it, and then there'll be another assignment later in the week. So there's a lot on for you this week. You will have the following week to finish everything off, but yeah, try to move yourself along. So I'd jump into that quiz now if I were you. There was a couple of other questions and comments, which I'll try tomorrow to address as we start the day. But thank you, everybody. Keep in contact. Good group. I like the interaction. Thank you. Enjoy your day. See you tomorrow morning.
Thanks, everyone. See you tomorrow. Bye.